Hello everyone. In today's session, we are going to discuss the concept of variables in Python. Let us discuss what do you mean by variables in Python. Before moving on to the definition of a variable in Python, let us discuss how to declare the variables in C programming language. After that, we will define the variables in Python. At the same time, we will give the comparisons and differentiation between the variables in C and variables in Python. In C, a variable can be defined as it is the name given to a memory location. Name given to a memory location. This is the definition of variable. Variable is also known as identifier in C. And another important thing is variable itself represents memory location. Represents memory location. This is very important to note. Okay. Now, how to declare the variable in C? The declaration in variable can be done by using this syntax. First, we are mentioning the data type. After that, we are space and we are giving the variable name. This is the way of declaring a variable in C. For example, the data type we are using is int and the variable here we are using integer a. That means in my C program, I want to use a variable a and I want to store only the integer type of values in the variable a. Before storing the integer value into the variable a, first in advance you have to mention the data type of the variable in the declaration, right? Once you declare the variable integer a in advance, then only you can store the integer value in the variable a. For example, if you want to give the value a equals to 10.5, it will not give error, but the thing is the variable a is going to take only 10. Out of 10.5, it is going to take only the value 10. Why? Because in advance you have declared that the variable type is integer. This is the case in C programming language. You can't store any other value other than integer. 10.5 is not accepted. It will not give any error, but the value it is going to contain is only 10. For example, in C programming, I want to store the value 10. Assume that this 10 is integer. Next value I want to store here is 20.5. This is floating point value. And assume that I want to store the string like this, welcome. I want to store the three different items. First one is integer and the second one is float and third one is string. If you want to store these three data items or values, we need to declare the variables. How many? Three variables. First, you have to declare the variable for integer like this, integer x. Next, you have to declare the variable float y, and you have to declare the variable character array. Assume that string for storing the string type of values. How many variables we require to store the different data items? Three variables. One is x, one is y, another one is character array in advance. Means before using the values or the data items, the first thing in advance you have to declare the variables x, y, and another one is string. This is known as static typing. Static typing. C uses the concept of static typing. But if you use the concept of Python programming language, in Python programming language, it is going to use the concept called dynamic typing. Dynamic typing. Or we can say it uses dynamic semantics. At the time of discussing introduction, we discussed Python is providing dynamic semantics. What is the meaning of this dynamic semantics? If you take C, we have to declare separate three variables in advance. Then only we can store the value in x10, in y20.5, in string welcome. But in Python, no need of declaring these three variables. You can take only one variable and the declaration is not necessary. No need of declaring a variable in Python. At the same time, it is going to store the different values runtime. For example, in Python, I'm using only one variable x. If you give the value 10, what happened? The 10 is going to assume internally as integer automatically. If you take x equals to 10.5, now x is going to contain the floating point value. If you say x is equals to welcome, it is going to store the string type of variable. During the lifetime of the variable and at runtime, it is going to contain the different data items. That is the greatness of using a variable in Python. But this is not the case in C programming. In C programming, before using any variable, that variable must be declared in advance and it is going to store only the particular data value, the type of value. If you are declaring the variable as integer, you have to assign only the integer value. Even though you assign the floating point value, it will not take that floating point value, it takes only integer. But this is not the case in Python. In Python, no need of declaring a variable, and one variable is going to store multiple data values, multiple data items. At the same time, it is going to contain only one value. First time you can give integer, next time you can use float, next time you can use string. That is the greatness of Python programming. That means Python uses the concept of dynamic typing, whereas C uses the concept of static typing. This is the main difference between Python and the variables in Python and the variables in C programming. Okay. See here, in C programming, whenever we say like this integer x equals to 10, what happened? First, the memory is allocated for the variable x, right? After that, the value is stored. In Python, for example, here I'm writing like this. In Python, if you say x is equals to 20, see, this is the syntax in C programming and this is the syntax in Python. In Python, no need of declaring the variable in advance, no declaration. Now, when we use the concept of variables in Python, first, the memory is allocated for the value 20. See here in C, first, we are giving the importance for the variable x, which represents the memory location, right? And the least importance is given to the value that is stored in the x. X itself represents the memory location. Whereas in Python, first take the value 20. 20 is stored in the memory. That means first memory is allocated for the variable 20. This 20 internally converted into zeros and ones. And for this, first the memory is allocated. Very, very important. Don't worry about the left side variable x. Assume that you treat this as a box, the memory area you treat it as a box. In this box, the value 20 is stored, and for this, the label we have sticked is x. Very, very important thing you remember here is in C, variable is the memory location. But in Python, a variable is simply a label attached to a value. This is very, very important. Simply a label attached to a value. Assume that the 20 is stored in the memory and you treat it as a box. Okay, on the box we have pasted one piece of paper. On that paper we have written the label x. That's all. Just the variable in Python is nothing but the name attached to a value, or we can say that label attached to the value. That's all. The label x doesn't represent the memory location, whereas in C, x represents the memory location. First, the memory is allocated for the variable x. Integer variable takes 2 bytes of memory, right? When you take float variable, it takes 4 bytes of memory. So first, memory is allocated for the variable first, then only the value is stored here. But whereas in Python, first memory is allocated for the variable, sorry, not variable, for the value. For example, in C, we have the variables like this: integer x is equals to 20, and here I am writing integer y. Next line we can say y is equals to x. That means first the memory is allocated for the variable x. How many bytes? 2 bytes of memory is allocated. Means a box is created for the variable x here. Next the value is 20. Now to store the value of x in variable y, here again we have to store the memory for the variable y. Y must be declared in advance and x must be declared in advance. To store the value of x in y, we need separate memory location for y, and the amount of memory allocated for the y is again 2 bytes. It depends upon the machine, but I'm taking 2 bytes. Now here when you say y equals to x, here it is going to store the value 20. See, here the box is y, here the box is x, the box represents x, here the value is dummy. Here also same thing, the box represents y and 20 is the dummy value. Means importance, the memory is allocated for the variable x. Here also separate memory is allocated for the variable y. This is the scenario in C programming language. If you use Python, here just I am saying x equals to 20. After that, we are saying y is equals to x. The same thing can be done in Python like this: x equals to 20 and y is equals to x. So here first we are giving the importance to the value. What is the value here? We are storing 20. First, the memory is allocated for the value 20, and you treat it as a box. The amount of memory allocated for the value, not variable, sorry. First, the memory is allocated for the value 20. After that, some tag is given for this box, or some label is given to this box. This label is attached to the box, that is x. Now, when you say y equals to x, there is no separate memory location created for y. Y is another label given to the same value 20. Y and x, these are the labels or the tags which are pointing to the same memory location or same box whose value is 20. This is the case in Python. Finally, I can conclude that in Python, a variable can be assigned like this. Variable is equals to object. No need of declaring a variable in advance. Directly we can say some variable equals to object. What do you mean by this? Previously I said variable x equals to 10. 10 is the data item. Any data item in Python is called object. Here we have thought that 10 is an integer. Instead of saying an integer, better to say it is an object. This is the broad sense. If you take the variable x equals to 20.5, here again 20.5 is an object. 20.5 is also an object. If you use x equals to a string like this, now this is also an object. All these three data items comes under an object. Now, the important thing to understand here is an object. What is mean by an object? In summary, I can say that in Python, there is no need to declare a variable, and the initialization is done like this: variable equals to object. What do you mean by an object? Any data item is called an object. Now, the clear definition for the object is an object is an entity. Any entity that consists of a data item, data, or we can say an entity which consists of the data along with properties and behavior. Properties and behavior. This is very, very important. Or we can say that Python is object oriented. At the time of discussing the introduction, I said that it is multi-paradigm. That means it supports object-oriented features also. That's why we are using the concept of objects. An entity, object represents an entity which consists of data along with properties and the behavior. For example, if you take student, the basic properties for the student here I'm taking is, here I'm taking properties, here I'm taking behavior. So behavior mainly we are talking about reading and writing. And the properties here I'm taking is student name, roll number, marks. These indicates the properties and these indicates the behavior. This is the structure of the student, or we can say the blueprint. We call it as blueprint. Instead of saying blueprint or the structure, we can use the word class. This is very, very important. This represents the structure, or the blueprint represents a generic class. Now, after defining this class, I'm going to take the student, the name of the student here we are taking Suresh. Suresh is the name of the student. Now, Suresh is an instance of the student, or we can say Suresh is the variable which belongs to this class, or we can say Suresh is the class variable. Now, whenever we create an instance Suresh, then this Suresh comes under object. The life comes to the structure only when a variable of type class, when the instance of the class like Suresh is created. Suresh here it is known as an object. Now, when Suresh is created, or the instance is created, then the properties for this are the values, properties and behavior. Now, the properties for this object Suresh is given as the name of this student is Suresh and rule number is 101 and marks he got is 205.6. These are the values. That means here we are replacing the values, and here the behavior is reading and it is writing. So this comes under the object, and this represents the generic blueprint, or we can call it as the class. Here I have explained the clear distinction between what is mean by a class and what is mean by an object. Now, when we use the variable x, okay, and if we assign the value 10, just now I said that 10 is an object. We are storing data item 10, that is nothing but the object, and we are giving the label x for this. Okay, we are storing 10. Memory is allocated for the 10. Okay, this you treat it as a box. The label attached to this box is x. And in this box, what is the object we have stored? This is integer object we have stored. Okay, now x represents 10. X represents 10. Now, this x is the label and 10 is called object. 10 is the object which is derived from the class integer, right? For example, if you take x equals to 20, 20 is also an object, okay, but it is integer. In this case, what you say is integer becomes the class and this 20 becomes an object. This is very, very important. If you say x equals to 10.5, 10.5 is the object. Okay, 10.5 belongs to what type of value? Floating point value. Float. This float comes under the class. The instance of the float class is 10.5. This is known as an object. Okay, now if I say x equals to hello, here hello is stored in the memory, right? Now, hello is the object which belongs to the class string. Class name is string and the object is hello. This is how the objects, or I can say that everything in Python is treated as a data item, and every data item is nothing but an object. And we have defined it An object is nothing but an entity which consists of data, not only data, along with the properties and the behavior. This is a clear distinction about the variables in Python, and also we have discussed the variables in C programming. In C programming, just we are using static typing, but in Python we are using dynamic typing, right? This is how we are going to use the variables in Python and C programming. Now we are going to see variable naming conventions in Python, or we can say rules for constructing a variable. Rules for constructing a variable. Or we can say, instead of saying variable, we can use the term identifier. What are the naming conventions, or we can say what are the rules for constructing the variable names? The first one says that variable name consists of the first thing is letters, comma, you can use numbers and underscores. But no special operators are allowed. Here, very important thing is no special operators or symbols. No special symbols are allowed. That means you can't use hash, you can't use @ symbol, you cannot use dollar symbol. These are the special characters, I can say special symbols. These special symbols will not be allowed in the variable name. Only it should consist of letters, numbers, and underscores. This is about the first rule. And the second rule says that variable name should start with a letter, or I can say underscore. This is very important. It should not start with a digit. Should not start with a digit. Start with a digit, or I can say number. This is the second rule. And third rule says that no spaces are allowed in the variable name. This is about the third rule, or we can say third convention. And fourth one is variable names. I can say that variable names should be short. This is very important. Should be short, at the same time descriptive. This is about the fourth rule. What do you mean by the variable name should be short and descriptive? For example, I want to use the variable name like this. I want to use name of the student. See, don't use this lengthy name as a variable, right? It must be very short, at the same time meaningful, descriptive. That means instead of writing the variable name of the student, you can write like this, student. I can use underscore name. This is a shortcut name, short name. At the same time, it describes name of the student, or we can say it is very easy to understand that this is the student name. Means this says the descriptive. At the same time, the variable name is very short. This is about the fourth rule. Now, fifth one is variable names are case sensitive. This is the fifth convention or fifth rule. What do you mean by case sensitive? For example, I'm going to use a variable like this. This is the variable I'm using is capital A. Next, I'm using small a. This is different and this is different. Uppercase letters and lowercase letters are treated as different variables. This is about the fifth convention. Now, after completing the 5 conventions or the 5 basic rules for constructing an identifier or variable, now we are coming to how to represent the multi-words, how to represent multiple words in variable names. What are the different conventions we are going to use to represent multiple words in a variable name? See, to represent the multiple words, the basic conventions we are going to use is, the first one we are going to talk about is camel case convention. We call it as camel case convention. And second one is Pascal case convention. These are very, very popular conventions to represent multiple words or multi-word strings variable names. Third one we are talking about snake case convention. These are the three important conventions to represent multiple words. Now we will discuss what do you mean by the camel case convention. Camel case convention. See here, I want to represent the multiple word variable student name. How to represent student name? See, in this case, you write first word like this, student, and next word, student name starts with the first word student, and second one is name. See, in camel case convention, from the second word onwards, every letter, the starting letter of the every word is capitalized. That means don't take the first word. So we are considering from the second word. From the second as well as the subsequent words are capitalized. The first letter of second and subsequent words are capitalized. That means student, and the next word we have name, right? So in the name, N is capitalized. But the first word, in the first word, S is not capitalized. This is about the camel case convention. Now coming to the Pascal case convention, what we are going to do is, in this convention, it is similar to the camel case convention, but thing is, the first letter of every word is capitalized. That means the above variable can be represented as capital S, student, and second word also. Here the first letter of the second word also capitalized, student name. Pascal case convention means that the starting letter of every word is capitalized, whereas in the camel case convention, the second word, the first letter of the second word and subsequent words, first characters or first letters are capitalized. This is the main difference between the camel case convention and Pascal case convention. Whereas in the snake case convention, we are going to use, in snake case convention, multiple words are separated with underscore. That is very, very important. See, we are not going to use the first letter is in capital. At the same time, the first character of the second word is capitalized. Only thing is, all the words are written in lowercase, but the thing is, the words are separated with underscore. That means student name is written as S name underscore name. So this is a representation known as snake case convention. These are the various types of conventions we can use to represent multi-word variables in Python. With this, I'm going to close the session. Thank you for watching.